Okay, so we did most of 2.2 the other day, finding how to graph the polynomial functions of higher degree. Now we're going to flip it around. So what happens if I give you the zeros and I ask you for the function? So when you're finding the function and you're given the roots, you're going to write an equation with f of x equal to, and then you just do x minus each root. And you're going to set up a parentheses for each of the roots that are given. The x minus means it will always change the sign on the root. So if the root given is positive, then in the equation it's going to be x minus. If the root given is negative, then it's going to be x minus a negative, which turns it positive. And then you're just going to multiply the polynomials. If there's 2 of them, FOIL it out. If there's more than 2 of them, obviously you got to FOIL it and then distribute to the last one. So example 1 just looks like this. Find the polynomial function that has the given zeros. I've got 3 zeros here, so I'm going to do f of x equals x minus a negative 1, which becomes plus 1, x minus 3, and x minus 4. So in the equation, they should all have the opposite signs, because if you think about the reverse of this, if I asked you to solve this, each of those would come out as the opposite sign, right? Like if I said this equals 0, and this equals 0, and this equals 0, then I'd end up getting the roots that were given to you, right? Everybody sees that? Okay, so now I'm going to multiply these two together. It doesn't matter in which order you do it. I'm going to multiply the first two together. X squared minus 3x plus x minus 3. Combine the like terms there. X squared minus 2x minus 3. And then I've got to take that and multiply it times x minus 4. So my first term's going to go to both of these. X squared times x is x to the third. X squared times negative 4 is negative 4x squared. Negative 2x times x is negative 2x squared. Negative 2x times negative 4 is positive 8x. And then the last one, negative 3 to the x and negative 3 to the negative 4. Negative 3x plus 12. And then when you want to combine your like terms, so x to the third, there's 2x squared, negative 6x squared. There's 2 x's, positive 5x, positive 12, equals f of x. Remember, it's an equation, right? So an equation of a function, that's why it gets f of x at the end. Anytime you're looking for an equation, you want to make sure you set it equal to either y, if it's just a regular equation, or a function, f of x. Easy stuff, right? Just be careful with your multiplying. Then it gets a little bit harder when you start to see something like this. So find the polynomial function that has the given zeros. This time you've got a binomial, right? Something with 2 terms that you have to subtract. So when I first set it up to figure out what sign's going to go in the front, I always look at just the first number, okay? Those are both positive 3, so I'm going to do f of x equals x minus 3 plus root 2, and that's going to go in parentheses because that negative is going to affect both of those. And then that's also a positive 3, so it gets x minus 3 minus root 2. And then I would distribute the negative, so this is x minus 3 minus root 2, and x minus 3 plus root 2. And then I'm going to FOIL them out. So I start with x, getting multiplied by all 3. I get x squared minus 3x plus x times root 2, or root 2 times x. The order there doesn't matter. Just make sure the x doesn't go underneath the root. Then the negative 3 goes to all 3. So negative 3 times x. Negative 3 times negative 3, which is positive 9. Negative 3 times root 2, which is minus 3 root 2. And then the last one, which is negative root 2 times all 3, negative x times root 2, positive 3 times root 2, and negative, what's root 2 times root 2? 2, okay? It'd be root 4, which is 2. Now go through, combine your like terms. There's only 1x squared. There's a negative 3x and negative 3x. So that's a negative 6x. There's a positive x root 2 and a negative x root 2. Those are going to cancel out. There's one constant, which is 9. Oh, sorry, just kidding. There's a 9 minus a 2 plus 7. And then there's a negative root 3, or 3 times root 2, and a positive root 3 times, sorry, a positive 3 times root 2. So those cancel out as well. So this equals f of x, and that's my answer. If you remember from Algebra 2, these things are called conjugates of each other when you've got the same expression but one has a plus and one's got a minus. When that happens, that second term should always cancel out, which means anything involving the root 2 should cancel out. So if I had 10 plus root 2, 10 minus root 2, I should have no root 2's in my answer. Okay? Does that make sense? All right. So if you do it correctly, if they are conjugates, then the roots are always going to cancel out. It's basically like setting up your difference of 2 squares. Questions on that one? Okay, and then the last one says this. Find the polynomial function with leading coefficient 1 that has the given zeros, multiplicities, and degree. So break it apart. What does leading coefficient 1 mean?
Your first, but not your first x.
Good. So whichever one has the highest exponent, if I put it in order from highest down to none, that first number is going to be 1x. There should be nothing in front of that x. That's what that first part means. Okay? If it has a 0 of 3 with a multiplicity of 1, how many parentheses of x minus 3 I'm going to have? 1. If it has a 0 of negative 2 with a multiplicity of 2, how many x plus 2's am I going to have? 2. And degree of 3 tells you what? Good. The highest exponent should be x cubed. Okay? So if you've done it right, it should work itself out. So let's multiply this out. I'm going to use a shortcut because I know that those are perfect squares. So I can actually multiply these. This would be x squared plus 4x plus 4. Okay? You square the first term, you double the product of the two, and you square the second term. If you didn't know it, just FOIL it out. But then I'm going to multiply it times x minus 3. So x times x squared is x to the third. X times 4x is 4x squared. X times 4 is 4x. And then distribute the negative 3. Negative 3 times x squared. Negative 3 times 4x, negative 12x. Negative 3 times 4, negative 12. So I get x to the third. There's 2x to the second, positive 4x, negative 3x, so positive x squared. Positive 4x, negative 12x is negative 8x. Minus 12. And then, as always, make sure you set it equal to f of x. So if you've done it correctly, your leading coefficient should be 1, and in this case it is. And the highest exponent should be 3 because that's your degree. Your homework is literally, I think it's 3 or maybe 4 problems, okay? It says 2.2 part 2. It's on WebAssign, but the link is there. Okay, make sure you show your work with these. Okay, there's a lot of work that goes into these. Questions? So this obviously is not on your quiz, but it will be on your test, which is next Tuesday. It's a week from today, which will include this and then 2, 3, which we're going to do over the next 2 days.